Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we're going to discuss a tabletop role-playing game that is very near and dear to my heart. And that is Cyberpunk 2020, the role-playing game of the dark future. Written by the legendary Mike Pondsmith and published by Artel-Saurian Games in 1990, Cyberpunk 2020 is the second edition of Cyberpunk, 2013 being the original edition. Cyberpunk is a game set in the near future, with evil megacorporations, warring booster gangs, cybernetic body enhancements, and pure style. Above anything else, Cyberpunk 2020 is the most style and attitude-based RPG that I have ever encountered. And everything inside the book, from just the slang and the normal terminology and just learning the rules, is just geared towards getting you into the frame of mind to play Cyberpunk, and I absolutely love that about it. Now, for those of you that are familiar with my channel, you're probably thinking, didn't he do Cyberpunk before? Yes, I did. Cyberpunk was the first RPG review that I did 2 years ago. I didn't have any good equipment at the time. I didn't have any format down. It was just pretty much one long take that was uncut, unedited, and it was terrible. It was embarrassing. I didn't like having it out there. So it's been 2 years, and I figure, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this again, and let's do it right.
And the original one didn't have me, Jack the NPC. So you can already be assured that Cyberpunk Review 2.0 is about to be a hell of a lot better.
Now, some other people probably stumbled across this because you were looking for the Cyberpunk 2077 video game. Sorry to disappoint you, this isn't that. This is the Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop pen and paper game that 2077 is going to be based on. I'm personally really looking forward to 2077. I've been wanting to see a video game version of this now since the late 90s, so I'm very excited about it, but this isn't probably what you're looking for, but stick around because this is an amazing game and it could possibly be a lot of fun for you. Now, one thing that I love about Cyberpunk is that you only need one book in order to play it. The entire game comes in one single book, 250 pages, that either a player or a game master can use, and that is all you need in order to start having fun. Now, there are a lot more books that are out there, a whole lot more, and I've got all of them. And I'm going to be giving some recommendations among those books later on near the end of the video, but those are all completely optional add-ons. The game itself can be played with a single book, just one investment, and that is awesome. The art is fantastic. I've always said that I put a lot of stock in RPGs just based off of their art. It's probably not the most fair judge of an RPG, but good art says a lot about the production quality of the rest of the game and the book, and art inspires players and game masters, and Cyberpunk's art is great. Much of it is done in that stylized fashion reminiscent of Patrick Nagel, a very big artist back in the 80s, and I absolutely love that about it. The game uses what's called the interlock system mechanic, and the only dice that you need to play for it are D6 and D10s.
Which means all those fancy D4s and D8s and D12s and D20s that you've been collecting, yeah, just throw those out. You don't need them here. Now, personally, I think there's a couple spots that have been real handy had they let us use a D4 or a D20, but nobody ever asked my opinion on any of this stuff. But even then, the system still works really good just using D6 and D10s.
The system is primarily skill-based, where players get to choose individual skills based off of a career package. This is versus being level-based, such as D&D, where you're a paladin or you're a wizard or something like that, and you're kind of along a set path. Cyberpunk is more focused on packages of skills that you can then add on and use individually, and those individual skills go up as you use them. But your hit points, however, because there is no levels in the game, never go up. You never get more hit points than what you start with.
Yeah, there's none of that, oh, my character's 12th level, so that kid with a switchblade ain't gonna hurt me because I got 200 hit points. No matter how powerful and how strong and how experienced your character is, you are always just one good stab away from death at all times. It's kind of like real life.
But even though the game is a skill-based game, there still are classes, sort of, in it. Players can be rocker boys, or solos, or net runners, or much more. However, these should be looked as more of being character careers or occupations than actual classes, because classes in RPGs mean something different. The system uses 9 stats, rated 2 through 10. Those are going to be determined by either random rolling or by a dice pool, whichever method that the game master prefers. I've always really liked that intelligence and technical ability were separate stats, such as somebody can be really smart and have no ability ability dealing with computers or engines or anything like that. That's more like me. Or you can have somebody that's really, really great with technology, but they're just not the brightest person you know, which I've known quite a bit of those. So I like the fact that they split those up for this game. Now each character then comes with 10 skills along their career path and 40 skill points to distribute among them however they like. It's pretty simple, but I've got a couple of house rules that I've added to this that I'd like to share. First, if a player doesn't want one of the career skills, such as they're playing a solo and the player says, you know what, I don't even want the rifle skill. Instead of them just putting 0 points in that skill and distributing the 40 career points among the other 9 remaining skills, just have that player choose a different skill, something related to their career and something that they intend to use, such as drive. It's more important that the character have 10 career skills to divide that skill pool among than it have to be these 10 specific skills. This is a very fluid game, so they just kind of started off with a suggestion, but you're not locked into it in any way. The next house rule that I like to recommend is that you cap starting skills off at 7. You don't let them go all the way to 10. Some players might be tempted just to start off by jacking all those points into 1 or 2 skills, bringing them all up to level 10. The highest it can go, meaning that they're the best in the world at them. But the cost is that they're now completely incompetent at everything else. And that can lead to a lot of frustration and boredom later on with that player, because unless they're doing that one specific thing that they're really good at, them being a one-trick pony, then they're going to be completely incapable of helping out or being involved with anything else. And then when they do get to use that skill, they never actually get to improve it anymore because they've already maxed it out. So I recommend go ahead, give them a cap of 7. That way they're still very good at something when they start off, but there's still room for improvement, and they still have more diversity among their skills, making them competent and capable at more than just one thing. Characters then get some pickup skill points to spend among any other skills that they want to help round out and personalize their character. It also gives the characters a life path, which is really fun in helping create a character's history. Allies and enemies and significant life events, both good and bad. The life path mechanic is a lot of fun. It's very easy to expand on and personalize and add your own touch to. We also get a great assortment of gear and equipment. Now, one thing that does become clear when you're going over this is how dated the game really is. Remember that we're looking at a sci-fi game that was written now 30 years ago and looked at now from the eyes of the late 1980s, early 1990s. So certain things like cell phones and fax machines and whatnot are not quite right for what it's really like now. As prophetic as much as the book was, not everything was completely right. No one even imagined smartphones at the time. Now, for a lot of that, I just go by whatever the normal prices in technology are for now. It's no big deal. Just ignore the book and say, no, all these options come standard on your cell phone. You don't have to be spending extra money for them. However, this does bring up one common complaint that I see quite often online. It's about the game and about how dated it really is. Now, here we are, it's almost 2020, and the world isn't like the book said it was supposed to be. We didn't get the self-aware clones in 2017, or the rise of cyber mercenaries in 2015, or the Crystal Palace Space City in 2011. And a lot of people seem to have a real problem with the game because of this timeline.
Which says more about those people having a serious lack of imagination than anything else. But if you find the timeline problematic, I got 2 easy fixes for you. First, take the timeline in the book and say that is when the cyberpunk world split off from our own, traveling along a parallel path. There you go, parallel universe, easy peasy fix. The other option is you just simply up the dates all by 30 years. So now you're playing Cyberpunk 2050, or I don't know, Cyberpunk 2077. I kind of like the sound of that one. But seriously, the people that have such an issue with this seem to lack the creativity required even to play RPGs. Maybe they should find a different hobby that requires less imagination, like, I don't know, golf or hot dog eating contests.
The game mechanics are pretty simple. Whenever a character attempts a skill, like driving a car or picking a lock, they simply add the level they have in that skill, which is 0 through 10, to the related stat for that skill. Every skill goes off of a stat, so that's going to be somewhere between 2 and 10. They add those up and then roll a d10 and add all that together. If the difficulty is average, the total needs to be 15 or more. If it's set as difficult, then the player needs to beat a 20 or more with all of those things added together, etc., etc. Of course, there are still plenty of modifiers, both good and bad, that can affect what that roll is going to be. Also, any attempted roll that comes up with a 1 has the potential of being a fumble and requires that the player roll on the fumble table for whatever type of stat that skill was going to be based on. Now, one criticism that I do have about the game is that the frequency of fumbles is extremely high. 1 in 10 chance that any time a player rolls for any skill of any sort, they're going to have to then roll on the fumble table. And out of the fumble table, 60% of those are actual fumbles instead of just failures. Now, we have had a lot of amusement, a lot of great times, and a lot of fun with the fumble table over the years. However, the frequency of them does seem a little bit extreme. Now, near the end of the video, I'm going to go over what we did to help kind of counteract that and a lot of great suggestions that I have. But as far as the game rules of what is inside the game, fumbles are just a little bit too common. Now, combat is where the game really shines. The cyberpunk mechanics, especially for firearms, are hands down my favorite of any RPG that I have ever played. They encourage that John Woo jumping through a hallway with pistol in each hand sort of fighting that a good cyberpunk game really deserves. The rules are also very fast and seriously brutal. Just about all the rules that you need in order to do combat can be summed up on this handy page that you can use for quick reference. Game Masters, I strongly encourage that you print this page up and give it to all your players. That way they can easily access it during the game and when they're having a combat. That way you don't have to slow a combat down by having to dig through the book trying to find that page. No, everybody's got it and it's at the tip of their fingers. I also suggest that you go ahead and print off and distribute copies of the fumble tables as well for the exact same reason. Now, one of the things that a lot of players don't understand about combat is that you can't be afraid to take penalties. In fact, you should be taking a lot of penalties when you do combat. Otherwise, you're not really kind of squeezing the full potential out of it. So let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. So let's say that your character has a reflex score of 8 and a handgun skill of 7. That gives them a 15. Then they get to roll a d10 whenever they attempt to fire that handgun. So that gives them a minimum range of 16 to 25 whenever they try to shoot their gun. Now, at close range, they just need a 15 to hit. Okay, so that's easy. Providing that they don't fumble, they have a 100% chance of hitting, even if they rolled as low as they could. But that's not all. Let's say their gun is also highly accurate, like they got a Malorian Arms handgun, and then it's been smart chipped, so this all comes together to give them a +5. That makes the bare bones minimum that they're going to make no matter what to hit, providing they don't fumble, be 21. So if you just need a 15 to hit, and excluding fumbles, the lowest that you could possibly get is 21, then it's kind of a waste not to take some penalties here in order to get a little bit more benefits. So let's say you decide to start running. Now that's going to give you a -3 to hit. Big deal, because you still have a 100% chance to hit. But that's also going to make you harder to hit by your opponent, so this is good in your favor. So let's say you go ahead and whip out a second gun, and now you're firing 2 guns at the same time, improving your rate of fire and also looking pretty cool. That's going to be a -3 for each gun as well, which gives us a -6 total. We still have a 100% chance of hitting our target, providing we don't fumble, because now we're running, we're harder to hit, and we look a lot more badass, doubling our rate of fire. So this is what I mean when I say it encourages you to fight like you're in a John Woo movie, because if your character just stands there in the same place, swinging their sword every single round and not moving, they're really losing a lot of the potential of what makes this game fun, and they're making themselves an easy target for someone else to hit. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as what you can do as far as exciting combat play. Now, melee fighting, on the other hand, is back and forth, where every attack gets to have a dodge roll in order to counteract it. It is a lot of fun, but once we start getting into martial arts, that's where we start getting all the options of the potential that it could start slowing the combat down. So while I do really like the melee system, it doesn't take too many melee combatants in a single round before it starts dragging the speed of the combat down. It's not usually a problem in a game where usually everybody's going to be pulling out guns, but if you do have a combat where you've got 5 or 6 people that are all doing melee, and I've done this, I've done more than that, it does start making the combat rounds drag down a bit because there's so many options, and every time somebody tries to hit someone else, that person gets to counteract it with a roll. So that's the only criticism I had if you have excessive melee. If it's just 1 or 2 combatants or even 3 combatants, no big deal. You can plow through that at maximum speed, and it is pretty awesome. Now, taking damage in Cyberpunk 2020 is serious business. For every 4 points a character takes, they start taking minuses on all of their skill rolls. There's no they're at 100% peak performance till they hit 0. No, if they get injured, they start suffering, and that reflects in all their rolls immediately. 8 points of damage from a single hit will destroy a limb, and if that's in the head, which also doubles damage by the way, it will kill you. So 4 points to the head, double that to 8, you are dead. Now, if you get 8 points of damage to a limb and it's destroyed, that's still going to prompt a death save, which means you might just die because a bullet took your leg off. But after 12 points of damage, just overall, 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, then that's going to give you to mortal wounded, and your character is going to need medical attention or die. Now, to put this into perspective, 12 points of damage total and your character could die. 8 points of damage, you lose a limb, and headshots get doubled that, so that's 4 points to the head. A 9mm in this game does 2 die 6 plus 1 damage, meaning they do between 3 and 13 points of damage per bullet. That means a single bullet can potentially kill or cripple or maim a character in one shot.
It's kind of like real life. There is no shrugging off that you just got shot. Even if you survive that immediate bullet hit, you're now going to be clutching your sides, holding your guts in, and taking all sorts of minuses because that bullet just got your full undivided attention. And that's just one bullet. An SMG is going to be slinging 20 of those bad boys at you every single round. And there ain't no magic fancy schmancy healing to immediately make it all go away like nothing happened. Oh yeah, sure, we got trauma team surgeons and all sorts of really cool medical drugs to help you out, but those are not instantaneous and they sure as hell ain't cheap.
Because humans are just fragile sacks of meat, that's what brings us to cyber, where we get to boost ourselves up and becoming more human than human, as they say. There is a ton of awesome stuff, from cyber eyes, cyber limbs, bulletproof skin, sockets where you can load chip skills directly into your brain, kind of like Neo from the Matrix, all sorts of fun stuff. Now, aside from money, the only cost for cyberware is humanity. And the more cyberware that you install, the more that your humanity and empathy begins to drop. If it ever hits 0, you go cyber psycho, become an NPC, and you lose that character forever. While I love the concept of humanity loss, and I think it is a great thing to use in the game, some of the rules about it do feel a little bit weird or the cost a little bit too steep. So for example, let's say your character lost an arm or a leg in a battle, right? A bomb goes off, they took a bullet, they lost the limb, they didn't have any choice in the matter. I don't think that the cost for having that limb replaced with a cyber limb should be the same amount that it costs if that character walks into a Ripper Doc, slaps down some money, and orders them to cut off a perfectly good arm or leg. So I think the necessity of a cyber limb should also dictate what the cost of the humanity for it is. If you're sawing off perfectly good limbs or you're ripping out perfectly good eyes, that should just cost more to me than if you're replacing something that you lost through other means. Now, once again, in the end, I'm going to go over some fan-made mods that have been done to this that really help it out. Overall, the humanity loss for cyber limbs isn't really a big problem. It doesn't hurt the gameplay that much, but I do think it could use a little bit of polishing. One area, however, that does have a problem is net running. While the staple of the cyberpunk genre is console cowboys plunging through the Matrix, I really dislike the Cyberpunk 2020 net running rules. Aside from feeling clunky and more like magic than anything else, net running is almost a completely different game than the rest of the Cyberpunk game entirely. Remember that this game isn't based off of computers as we know them now. This is based off of computers and the concept of the internet in the late 1980s when most people had no idea what it was and really just thought of it like magic. This is one of the few areas where the age of the game becomes glaringly obvious. So to run the game, whenever your heroes are, storming some sort of corporate complex while your net runners are storming the data fortress in the digital net, it now requires that the game master is running 2 separate games and 2 separate systems practically in order to do that. And it's very clunky, it's very awkward, and it's very weird. Now, I have used Netrunner PCs, I've successfully run the Matrix before, and it's never been as fun in practice as it is in theory, because the general consensus among every Cyberpunk game master that I've ever spoken to is that net running is kind of crappy. Now, ways around it that I've seen is one game master used to bust out the net running card game, and they would play a quick round with the player in order to do net combat, and that worked very well for them. Another method that I've used and most other game masters use is they leave the net running to NPCs. PCs. Like they have some hacker somewhere that they hire. That way the PCs stick together as a group and they do their quest. I love every other aspect of the Cyberpunk game and the interlock system, but I'm sorry to say that internet and net running is its biggest weakness. If any prospective GMs out there see it and they're like, challenge accepted, or they want to try net running and they get it to work and they get it to have fun, great. Congratulations, have fun, knock yourselves out, but I'm just going to say that the chances of that are pretty slim based off my experience and once again, every other Cyberpunk GM that I've ever spoken to. While you only do need the core book to play Cyberpunk 2020, we've run several campaigns with just that single book. There are a lot of other great add-on books available. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there are a couple that I do highly recommend that what you start off with once you start trying to expand your Cyberpunk library. The first one of those is the Chromebooks. There are 4 Chromebooks, but they're available in pairs. So Chromebooks 1 and 2 is one book, and then Chromebooks 3 and 4 is a second book. The Chromebooks are a valuable resource for equipment, weapons, new cyberware, vehicles, and fashion. As I've said, the game is about style and attitude, and the fashion section of these books, especially in Chromebook 4, which we have used a whole lot. We've probably worn that section out in my book. The Chromebook 4 fashion section on how to create your own designs and everything is absolutely wonderful. It completely changed and improved how we did the game. The next I'd recommend is the Night City Source Book. While Nero Tribes and Home of the Brave did an excellent job kind of expanding on the Cyberpunk 2020 universe and how that world works, the Night City book is what sold it the best for me and really got me to look at it as the sort of world that they're going for. Finally is Blackhand Street Weapons, or what we've always referred to it as the Big Book of Guns. This is a collection of all the weapons from all the books in Cyberpunk 2020 assembled and put in one place. We have used the hell out of this book, and it has been worth its weight in gold multiple times over. Again, none of these books are actually necessary in order to play Cyberpunk 2020. But if you have started playing it and you want to expand your library and see what all is out there, these are the books that I'd recommend you start with as you start expanding your library and exploring more of what Cyberpunk has to offer. Now, the last thing I'm going to recommend is something a bit different. Because Cyberpunk 2020 has been around for so long and loved by so many people over such a good amount of time, there is a fan-made rules modification out there called Interlock Unlimited. Now, this is sort of an elaborate house rule mod and everything that goes for the Interlock system. They've expanded occupations and skills, making the game 100% skill-based now, which I love. There's expanded life paths, rules that have streamlined combat, especially handling explosive rules. Net running, it fixes all the problems with net running. Net running with Interlock Unlimited is easy and it is fun. I've taken Interlock Unlimited out of the Cyberpunk universe and I've actually used it for all sorts of other things. I've used it for regular fantasy with, knights in shining armor and that sort of deal. I've used it for 1920s pulp. I've used it for zombie games. By the way, the Cyberpunk game, just the basic one without Interlock Unlimited, is fucking fantastic for zombie games. I cannot recommend it enough, but once we did it with Interlock Unlimited, it also became a whole lot of fun. Just take out the sci-fi and the cyber and all that. Amazing for those sort of games. Now, do I agree with 100% of everything in the Interlock Unlimited fan mod? No. Do I use everything in it? No. That's the beauty of house rules, and it is just a collection of different house rules. Some people get caught up because they're like, oh, all this is useless because there's one thing I disagree with. What are you talking about? It's house rules. You can disregard 1 or 2 or 20 things and just use one thing if you want. It is a great collection. I have used it for some time. I'm one of the contributors on it, and I highly recommend that somebody try Interlock Unlimited out. However, you should start with basic Cyberpunk Interlock Regular. Get used to it, see how it works, kind of get, a little bit more set in your ways, and then expand that out by picking up the free, once again, cheap as free, Interlock Unlimited to really get every amount of pain out of this game that you can. So, in conclusion, if you are looking for a game that is fast and fun, drips style and attitude, I highly recommend Cyberpunk 2020. It's been one of my favorite games now for over 20 years, since 1996 when I started playing it, and I cannot recommend it enough. Also, I've reviewed a few modules for it, including the mini scenario Open Highway that's in the back of the core book, so prospective game masters might want to check those out. Also, I've included links down below for the starter packages that I give all my players whenever we start a Cyberpunk campaign. Now, these are house ruled up, so there are a few house rules kind of mixed in there. So check them out, see if you like them, use what you can. If you don't, you can kind of make your own based off of that. But I figured, hey, I might as well make them available for everyone that wants to see what they look like, and then they can build their own off of it. Hopefully, with the release of Cyberpunk 2077, the tabletop game is going to find a new generation of players who can love this game and this world as much as I have. And in a few months, R. Talsorian is supposed to be releasing something called Cyberpunk Red, which I'm looking forward to, and I can't see what they have in store.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you want to see some of our other reviews or RPG philosophy videos, any of that stuff, just hit that subscribe button. Until next time, Choombas, you have a great day.